All right. Okay, we're going to get started. Is everyone able to see my screen? I'm just checking here. All right, so welcome to this second session of the OnTask workshop. This is a hands-on session where I'll actually be taking you through the process of setting up your subject for feedback using OnTask. So my name is Lisa. In case you haven't met me before, I'm a postdoctoral research fellow working in automated feedback. So I work with tools like Writer and OnTask, and anything to do with feedback that is based on data. So I'm really glad that you're here, and I hope that you learn a lot from this session. And this is not the end. As we always say, this is just a conversation starter, and definitely there'll be opportunities to talk more about this in the future. So as I get started, just to remind everyone that this was part of a two-part workshop. Last session, what we did was we actually came back to the notion of effective feedback, since OnTask is about feedback. So we just want to come back to the basics. And then I gave an introduction of how OnTask actually works. So we did some thinking about how OnTask might actually be able to help us apply effective feedback principles. And then I went through some scenarios about how various academics had actually designed feedback within their subjects using OnTask. So I can't highlight enough the importance of aligning the design of the feedback within your own subject learning design so that it makes better sense for the students and they will find it more effective. So for today, we'll go through quite a few things as I take you through the process of using OnTask and setting it up for your subject. So what I've done is I've popped in the chat a little link to a manual that you can follow along. So, sometimes you might find that it might be a little bit slow for you, so you can actually speed ahead. And it's something that you can keep for future as well. Okay, so after I take you through that whole process, it's quite a lot of click around. We're going to step back and come back to our subject to think about how we can actually, what are the considerations that we need to think about when we design feedback in your subject. And then to end off, I'll talk about some of the ongoing support that's available. Right. So we're a very small group. If at any time you have any questions, please don't hesitate to even just shout out, and because it's just a few of us, or drop a note in the chat. And Ram, I'll get your help to just monitor the chat for me. I forgot to introduce Ram. Ram is our PhD student at KIC. He's also going to be working in the area of automated feedback. So you might see him in future sessions as well.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get working with OnTask. The first thing that I'm going to do with you is to introduce the scenario. I think some of you may not have been able to do this yet, so I'm just going to grab this link in case you haven't managed to download the data set. Please do that now. This is a training data set that we'll be working through. So in there, the scenario that we have, it's quite a realistic scenario. We have a large first-year subject, about 500 students that are enrolled by diverse students, so meaning that they come from different programs. They all have coming from with different resident status as well, different commitments and different subject motivations. We're going to assume a fully online learning environment that has Zoom lectures, weekly quizzes, and discussion forums. Okay, so this might sound like some of your subjects, so that hopefully it's something that you can relate to. Okay, so just to check whether you have managed to download the data set, are you having some issues? Please use use your UTS account so that that will give you that immediate access. Yeah.
So is it all for CSVs?
Plus the message text folder. Yeah. So just download the whole folder and save it somewhere that you can easily access, because we will be using this throughout the session. Yeah. Okay. So now let's get into OnTask. So I'm just going to get you to go into OnTask. Let me get my screen up. Okay, so just to check, can you see the OnTask on my screen? Yeah. All right, so after you log in with your details that I've given you. You can change your password. Just keep your password handy because at the moment there's no automated way to reset it. But if you ever do misplace your password, please don't hesitate also to reach out to me, and I will get on it as fast as I can to reset your password so that you can access OnTask again. Okay, so don't worry, this happens. I mean, we have like, you probably have like 1,001 passwords to remember, so no problems. If you forget yours, just ping me and I will set it up for you again. All right. Okay, so when you log into OnTask, you will see this is what you call the dashboard, and you will see quite for your dashboard, because this is probably your first time using OnTask, it will be empty. But as you start to use OnTask for each subject, you will have these different boxes for each subject that you have, which is nice because then you kind of have a record of what you did, the kind of data that you use, and the messaging that you used in order to carry on. Yeah. Okay, so what we'll do first is we're going to set up OnTask for your subject. And what happens is we would need to start by creating a workflow. All right. So what is a workflow? A workflow is just kind of like a holder that comprises all the data about your students, as well as the messages that go out. It's like a placeholder for all this information that you are working with so that you can come back to it each time. So we're going to follow this. We're going to create a new workflow called Intro to Psychology. And good practice, one tip for good practice is to, when you name your workflow, give the subject title as well as the session that you're teaching in, so that you can remember when this was used. Okay, so I'm going to take us through that now. So to do a new workflow, we will just click on New Workflow, call it Introduction to Psychology, Spring 2023. Yep, something like that. And I'm just going to call it OnTask Demo. Okay. And then just click on Create Workflow. I think I will follow what I had. All right, so when you come here, here's the next prompt. Whenever you start a new workflow, you always need the data to go along with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to upload the data. All right, so we can see from the left side, there are 4 options to upload data. And the one that I usually like to work with is the CSV upload, because it's a little bit more straightforward. And most of the files, especially if you are downloading reports from various systems, they will be in CSV. There's no problem with the Excel upload. It's just that for Excel, because there are various worksheets within a workbook. Yes, that's right. You're doing this along with me. Because there sometimes could be various worksheets in a workbook. So OnTask actually needs you to specify which worksheet that you're referring to. So that's kind of like an extra step. So we work with CSVs. And so just let's click on this one. So CSV, upload or merge. And then it will prompt you to choose a file. And here, if you have your data set handy, you need to pull up that folder now. And you can see the data, the CSV files are numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're going to upload them in that order over the course of this workshop. We're going to start first with the student list. Okay, so you'll see 2 student lists on my screen, and I'll explain why that is in a moment. For you, please select the student list.csv and click on open. For me, I'm going to select the student list trainer, which you don't have. Just click on open. All right. And then click on next. All right. Okay, so if you see what you see on my screen will be mostly the same, except for one little row that is different. Okay, so for yours, you might see this, not be able to see this come up as key, the email. This is because your email column is blank. I've had to keep it blank because I found that sometimes when we used to have fake emails in there, but what happened was that participants accidentally clicked on the send button, and that sent out 500 bogus emails, which raised problems for Amazon Web Services, which is, is a service that sends out these emails, and they start to flag the institution as suspicious. So I've had to keep that email column blank. But for in future, when you work with your own subjects, you will be able to, have these email column filled in. So for training purposes, I have it here to show you. Okay, and you just need to click on finish. What does key column mean? OnTask recognizes key columns when each row has a unique value. And that's important because your data table is not static. You're going to have to keep uploading data. And so OnTask needs you to identify a key variable that it can match your new data to. All right, so that each new data is linked to your existing students. Okay, so these should always be kept as key because these indicate that there are all unique values within these rows. You click on finish, you'll be able to see your table. Okay, and as I said, your email column will be blank, but this is how it would otherwise look like. All right. Okay, so this is your basic starter pack, so to speak. It contains the students' names and the emails, which is important for sending out that email and addressing it to students. All right, so what do we now do? Let's go back to the manual. Okay, I'm just going to, we have done this part. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about retrieving the class roster from your subject canvas, because most likely this is what you'll be doing. Some academics use MSA+, some academics use subject canvas. So I'm just going to talk about the canvas option. I highlighted this in part 1 of the workshop. Importantly, if you want to use data from Canvas to provide feedback to your students, you will first need to enable new analytics when you publish your Canvas subject. So this is really important. That's why it's in red. You can find the new analytics button in the menu. Sometimes it's on the left, sometimes it's on the right. Just look out for this. So click on new analytics to enable it. And then when you do that and you click on it again, you'll be able to see the class roster. All right, and that's where you can download the class roster form to populate your table in OnTask. Okay, so OnTask will give you the student name comprising the first name and last name as one column. So in order to, personalize to the student's first name, what you would do is you would create a separate column for the student's first name. Yeah, and if you need some assistance with that, Ram or myself will be able to help you to work through that. So as I said, we're here to support you as you use the tool. So if you ever needed help with any of these operations, just ping us and we'll be more than happy to help. Right? So that's what you do, and then you can follow the steps that we just done to upload the table into OnTask. Okay. So it doesn't stop there. What we need to do is to actually keep uploading and merging additional information to the students' table, because as the semester progresses, the students will be doing more things and doing more activities. So you want to probably give some feedback to them on their progress. All right, so I'm going to take you through the process, very simple process of merging the data. All right, so in order to add more data to your table, go to this tab called Manage Table Data, and if you click on it, you just need to click on Upload or Merge Data, which takes you to the same menu as you saw before. So it's basically the same functions. And then we're going to do another CSV upload, merge. So this time we're going to merge data. We're going to choose the next file. So choose the file, which is the attendance. All right, so just open that, select and open that, and then OnTask, just check that that's the file that you want, and then click on next. And then what you can see is the student ID, and basically OnTask is reading the table, and what you want to do is just check that this is the correct table, and this is the columns that you need. All right, so these are 4 weeks of attendance, and OnTask recognizes that this is the key because it is every row is unique. Then just click on next. And then you get a prompt asking what is the key variable to match with, and how do you want to merge the data. So in this case, it's very simple. There was only one key variable in this new data set. So we just make sure that both are aligned. So the key column in the existing table is the ID, same with the new table. So OnTask will merge based on this data. Now we want to choose the rows. For this, I would say we will go to always choose the first option. In that way, you will not lose data, because sometimes we find that when we select only certain rows to upload, we lose the original data. So OnTask thinks that you don't need them anymore, and then that data gets lost. So just select all rows in both tables, and then click on next. And OnTask will say, okay, looks like this is what's going to happen. We're going to have the key variable matched with the existing key variable. And these are new rows, new columns that are going to be added in from the new data. Yeah. So that all looks good. Just click on finish. And then you can see that OnTask has added these new rows to the right. So the new columns will always be added to the right. And sometimes it seems rather random the way it's been uploaded. And if you prefer them to be in order, you can actually move the columns around by clicking and dragging them. Something like that, so that they're in some kind of order. That's just for aesthetic purposes. It doesn't need to be done, but it's just showing that that's possible. Yeah. Okay. One thing that I need to also show you, which is quite handy, is this thing called the dashboard. So the dashboard gives you a kind of summary of the data in your table for each variable. Okay, so if you click on dashboard, okay, so what sometimes might be handy for you to have an idea about your subject is to see, well, like what proportion of students are like male and female. That's if you have the information. That's not something that we really look at, I think, most of the time. But what we want to see is maybe like which program they're coming from, so that you can see where your students are enrolling from. So you can see there's quite a nice balanced group of programs that they're coming from. And you can see that most of them are domestic students, but a significant proportion being international. So what does that mean for supporting these students? Do we need to, have some additional support for them? You can see that a lot of them are full-time, which makes sense because they are domestic students, and not so many are part-time. So again, what does this mean for, do we need to actually, we may not need to do a lot in terms of supporting part-time students because there's not many. And then you have the attendance data for each week. It looks like most of them are sitting at 1, so they have been attending class. So this is just the dashboard function to give you an overview, and it might give you ideas about how you want to segment the data to create conditions as well. Okay, so click on back to bring us back to the table. The back button was at the top. Yeah, and you're back to your table now. What I'm going to get you to do is to try taking a turn at this. What you're going to do is to try, okay, we've done this. Try uploading or merging the next file from the data set. Okay, so this is going to give you like a minute to do this on your own. All right, were you able to do that? Any luck? Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to do that as well so that we're both on the same page. So I'm just going to quickly upload that data. So quiz score weekly into the table. And then choose next. And choose all. And next. Okay, and that's your new data. Finish. All right, so we have now, if you just pull your cursor to the right, you can see your new columns, right? All right. So that's adding merging new data into your table. Let me just see where I am. So we can actually move on to the next step. So now you have all this data. Let's try the next step that we want to do is to create some personalized feedback or support messages to the students. So there are three possible things that you might want to do, or three possible scenarios. So the first the first step is to create text conditions. You might also want to create filters, and you might be also using surveys, which is what we are seeing as becoming kind of like there's an increase in interest in using surveys as well, and personalizing feedback and support based on these surveys. All right, so I'm going to go back to OnTask and show you how to create these personalized messages. So the first thing that we want to do is to click on actions. So actions is refers to basically your feedback, right? So you can click on this button or on this button up here. When you click on actions, it just prompts you what you want to do is to create a new action. Okay, so let me just double check what we're doing. We are going to create messages to a welcome message. All right. So the first scenario is to create a personalized email with different text conditions for all students. Okay. Hi, Andrew. I noticed that you joined us. Yeah. So just to let you know, we're moving through the manual. So Ram, if I can get your help to just put the link for the manual in for Andrew,
Yeah.
and then you can just catch up as we go along.
Oh, great, thanks. Sorry,
Okay.
was this starting at, it was started at 2:30, yeah?
2 o'clock.
2 p.m.
That's
Oh,
okay.
right,
No
I had
worries. Yeah.
2:30, sorry.
That's okay. All right. So this is what we'll do. So we're going to create I guess, a welcome message. Create a condition. We need to create conditions so that we can send specific messages based on these conditions. So we're going to create a condition based on study load, which is whether the student is full-time or part-time. Okay, so we're going to create a new action that is called week 1 welcome. And the description is welcome and tailoring messages based on study load. So you can just copy this and use this information. So what was that? Week 1 welcome. And the description would be to welcome and tailoring messages based on study load. Okay. And for the action type, it's just personalized text. Okay, and then you just click on create action. And you'll come to the message editor. All right, so it lands you, the landing page is on the message editor, but what we really want to do is to create conditions. So you can see this tab here, text conditions. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so text conditions, click on this tab. And it will ask you to add a condition. So what we'll do is we're going to create 2 conditions, one for study load as full-time and one as part-time. So we're on, if you're following with the manual, you just move on to slide 37. So we're going to do create a condition called part-time for part-time students and it's based on what's in the table. So I just want to highlight here that when we enter the conditions, we need to follow the conventions that were used in the table. So by this, I mean that if this data was, if the cell value is capitalized, we also need to follow that capitalization convention. All right. Okay, so I'm going to take us through OnTask to do that now. So back to OnTask plus condition to create a condition. And we call it, we'll call it part-time students. And if I'm not wrong, this was for part-time students. Okay, so I like to kind of spell it out. It looks like, why is it so repetitive? Because it helps me to know what exactly this condition was for. So this is for part-time students. And then, so what I'll do is I will click on study load. So to create the condition, the text will be shown if study load equals to part-time. So follow the convention. It was both words were capitalized. So we'll put, just enter it in as part-time. Yeah. And then create a condition. And you will see that OnTask has created the condition, and it very helpfully, it has also identified that 45 students meet that condition. Okay, and you'll see why this is helpful in a while. Okay. So I think, is it now is your turn? Let me just check. So this is part-time. All right, so it's your turn. Try to create another condition to for full-time students. So the same thing that I did just now, create a condition for full-time students.
Is that with the same welcome message?
So we're not moving out of, yes, within the same message. Yes, okay. Correct. So don't move out of that dialogue. Yeah, I'm going to let you play around and see whether you can try doing that. How's it going? Good. Okay, so let me just also get up to speed. So your condition will look like this. Okay, full time. Okay, plus condition going full time. And this is a condition for full-time students. And the text will be shown if study load equals full time. And create that condition. So if you look at both, now you have created two conditions. Can you see why the numbers are helpful? Yeah, so in our case, we have a nice round number of 500. So it just helps me to check that the conditions are working. Because if this number doesn't, if the two numbers don't add up to 500, it means that you have some overlap somewhere. Which means that you need to adjust the conditions. Yeah. So for today, we're just working with very simple conditions. But as you go along, you'll find yourself being willing to venture into like combinations of conditions. And that can be challenging, but it's very doable. Yeah. So the way to check is just checking that the numbers add up to your full cohort. Okay, well done. So now we have actually created two conditions around the study load. Right? Now what we can do is to get writing that email, right? So just go back to this tab, the personalized text. I think we can just save it. It probably is already saved, but just save it and then go to personalized text tab. And then now we're going to create the message. So a lot of people wonder, like, how do I even start writing the message? Think about a normal email, okay? and just write according to that. So we've already prepared the messages for you so that you don't have to start from scratch. So if you go to your folder, the training data set folder, you will be able to see, let me just bring it up for you. Okay, the message text folder. If you click on that, you will see 3 messages, right? We're going to start first with opening the week 1 welcome. Okay, so just open that up. What we're going to do is we're going to just copy that and bring it into the message editor. Save some time, and also to show you how the conditions work. Okay, so you should see this. Let's just copy the whole thing. Okay. And bring it into here. All right. Were you able to do that? Yeah. Okay, so now how do we get the student's name in? We'll just enter the column value. All right, and you can do this for anything. Let me just show you first. So you want to address the recipient. So put your cursor where it should go, where that student name should go. So dear given name. All right. And you can do this with anything that you want to insert. Like, for example, you want to show students their marks. You will be able to insert the value at in the body of your message where you want it to go. All right. Okay. So that's where the personalization happens. So now how do you get like specific parts? So the tip is to write the whole message first. All right. And then what you can do is don't do any formatting yet. But we're going to assign the conditions to each part of the message. So this part of the message is for the part-time students, right? And this part of the message is for full-time students. Okay, so in order to make sure that this text goes just to the part-time students, the rest of it, if you don't select it, the rest of it goes to all students. All right, so you want this bit to go to the part-time students. So select the text and then select the condition. So part-time students. And then you can see that basically OnTask has marked up the bits of the message that need to go to these students. All right. So it's going to let you try doing that with the full-time students. Assign the condition.
So it looks like the links dropped out. That was
Right.
made.
Yeah. So don't do the links yet. We need to assign the conditions first, because what happens if we put in the links and other formatting, when we put in when we start to use the conditions, it scrubs out all the formatting. So we save the formatting to the end after we have assigned the conditions. Okay, so I'm just you probably were able to do this with no problems. So this is for full-time. We want to use the condition full-time, and we can see that this will be for full-time students. Yeah. Okay, so now you can start to do your formatting. You can, very importantly, and what is really valuable is being able to create direct hyperlinks so that you want your feedback, your advice to be actionable, right? So sometimes it's helpful for students to be led directly there. So you would just do the normal way, which is to select the text and then just insert the hyperlink. I'm just going to insert a random, so that you can show it's activated. Yep. And you can see, will you be able to see? Oh, not at this point, but you can see that it's an active link now. Yep. Not sure whether someone had a question. Nope. Okay. And we'll do that for the other thing as well. So for this particular message, where was that hyperlink? Okay, I think there was a hyperlink somewhere.
Final
but
paragraph, there was one.
Oh yeah, okay.
Check it out.
Oh, that's right here. So we can put the hyperlink here, which is, thank you for that. Yeah. then that becomes a hyperlink as well. And then you can also add some formatting if you wanted. You can, if you have a really long email with lots of information, it's helpful actually to have different headers so that the students can see clearly how the information is organized. And you can change the fonts and things like that. Okay, let's save it so that we don't lose our message. Okay, and so we have successfully created our first message, but yikes, this message is going out to 500 students, and we just want to know that the conditions, they're getting the correct conditions for each student. So what's really helpful for OnTask is that you can do a preview of the message so that you can check everything. You can check whether it's showing the student's name, and also you can see whether they're getting the right message. So this student has a study load of full-time, and they are getting the message for full-time students. And then you can keep doing previews. Okay, so here's a part-time student. You can see that they are getting that message for the part-time. Okay, so it's kind of useful to be able to just double check. Also, you know, sometimes we're not happy with some of the spacing. You can actually adjust that based on what you see in the preview. Okay, so well done. You created your first message. Now we can close it. When you close it, your message, the nice thing is that it actually saves all the work that you've done. So you haven't lost anything, even if you've closed it. And now what's our next step? So you'll see this here. All right. Okay, so just to step back a bit, what we have done is we have created a message based on different text conditions. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a condition based on ongoing performance. So these are now, we're going to give them feedback based on their quiz performance. Quiz 3 and 4, we're going to create 4 conditions for personalizing feedback to students who passed or failed each of the quiz. So that's pass, fail, pass quiz 3, pass quiz 3, fail quiz 3, pass quiz 4, fail quiz 4. All right. So let's do that now. We're going to create a new action. Okay. So this is a new email going out to your students. So a new action. And what do we call it? We're calling it quizzes 3 and 4 feedback. It's just pass fail feedback for quizzes 3 and 4, and it's personalized text. Okay, so quizzes 3 and 4 feedback. It's pass fail. Yeah. Okay. And then create the action. And it leads you here again. Okay. So we're going to create those text conditions. Remember, this is where we go to the text conditions tab. And we're going to first start off with the quiz 3 for quiz 3. Okay, let's create the text conditions together for quiz 3 passed and if quiz week 3 failed. Okay, so back to OnTask plus a condition. And we call the first one if quiz week 3 passed. And here I like to put, well, if they pass, it means that they get 50 or more. Right? So once again, I'm spelling out the description because it helps me to define it here. Okay, so I'm looking for quiz week 3, 50 or more. So quiz week 3 equal or more. So greater or equal to 50, right? And then we create the condition. And we can see that out of the 500, only 26 learners or students have passed. Okay, and now we'll create the fail condition. Okay, so plus condition if quiz week 3 failed, right? So failing means less than 50. And so this is quiz week 3 less than 50. And then just create the condition. Okay, so we can see again, just eyeballing the numbers. Yeah, it looks like 474 plus 26 is 500. So your whole cohort is covered. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to, I think now is the time to let you do the week 4 quiz. Yep. So create 2 conditions for students who have passed or failed week 4 quiz. Right? So 2 more conditions around the pass and fail for week 4. How's it looking? Okay, I'm going to now work through it. Assume most of you would have been able to work through at least one more. So let me just get mine up to speed. So I'm doing if quiz week 4 passed. Passing means quiz 4 is 50 or more. And so I choose quiz week 4 equal or greater than 50. And then create that condition. All right, 33 learners. Now I add the week 4 failed condition. So if quiz week 4 failed, that's quiz week 4 less than 50. Quiz week 4 less than 50. And so we can just do a quick eyeballing. 33 plus 467, that's 500. So the conditions are correct. Okay, so right now, as I said, this is a really simple segmentation of the data. But if you want to give more fine-grained, like for example, academics have been giving based on like high distinction and distinction, pass or credit and fail, even at that level. So it is possible to do that as well. But for today, we're just focusing on a very simple condition so that we can get used to it. Just click on save. All right. And you can guess what we need to do next, which is to create the message. So move over to the personalized text tab. And if you look into your training dataset folder, you will see quizzes weeks 3 and 4 feedback, right? Just open that up. And you will be able to see the whole message. So enable editing so that I can copy. So long message, but basically all the parts have been, all the conditions are covered here. This is the, so just a reminder that it's been helpful so far based on experience to write the whole message, including all the different conditions. Put it somewhere like on a Word doc with the links as needed, so that when you're ready to send the message, you can just copy and paste it into the message editor. Okay. So do you remember how to insert the student's name? Yeah. So we'll first start off by addressing the student, putting our mouse cursor at the point where the column value needs to be inserted. Dear given name. Okay, so now I'll let you assign the conditions and then we'll just do a check. Yeah, okay. So I'm just taking cues from people who are nodding. This is pretty, so it should be quite easy to do now. So here you have the students, the message that goes to the students who passed the week 3 quiz. So we can use this condition. And then those who didn't pass will get this condition. For week 4 pass, they get this condition. And then for week 4 fail, they get this condition. Okay. And then now what do? You would then insert wherever, whatever hyperlinks are needed. So, readings. Just to show you the activated hyperlinks, yeah, and so on. Okay, so remember that from our part 1, we said that, whenever we write our feedback messages, effective feedback really needs to be timely, personalized, actionable, understandable, and show care. And we said last week that actually this idea of showing care is actually quite important for students, recipients of your feedback. So if they know that you're someone who actually cares about their performance, they're more likely to enact that feedback. And so this is just an example of how a supportive message could look like, especially for students who didn't pass. What is some advice you have for them? What can they do in order to improve their learning for the next round? Yeah. Okay, and so now we have actually created 2 messages with personalized conditions. Let's close it. So closing will actually save your work and go back to the action table. All right, let's see where we are next. I'm just going back to my thing. Okay, so now we have created 2 types of messages. Now, we haven't actually sent them, okay? So what I'm going to do now is to show you how to send off your personalized message. So let's go back to our actions. Let's choose the week 1 welcome, all right? And we send off a message by, by going here and just click on the run button, okay, on the rocket button. And that doesn't actually send anything yet, so don't worry. What it does is it opens up a new dialog, because what we need to do is to define the email subject. Okay, so just want to highlight that the email subject is quite important, or it's really important, because it flags this to the student what this message is going to be about, and it determines whether they will open it or ignore it. Okay, so a tip is to make sure that your subject is there in the email subject, so students don't lose your email amidst all the big sales and whatever announcements that go out to the whole campus. Yeah, just make sure that you have your subject there, and maybe a brief note about what your message is about. And another tip is to help the students know that what you're actually giving them is feedback. So if you're giving them feedback, for example, on their quiz performance, you want to flag in the subject feedback on quiz performance, so that students know, oh, this is feedback, right? I'm getting feedback from my academic Okay, so that's the email subject. And then what you'll do, this is not showing up for you, right, at the moment, because the email column is not populated. But when you work with your table, this should be showing up. But if it isn't, it's just, OnTask is just choosing whatever column has unique values. So just make sure that the email is the one that is chosen. Okay. Very, very important. Please don't fill any of these up, because I learned the hard way that if you have 600 students and you put yourself as a CC or a BCC, you are going to get 600 emails in your inbox as well. Okay, so don't fill this up. And don't sabotage your colleagues by putting them in the CC list as well. All right. What you do want to do is to check both these middle boxes. Okay, so this one send you a summary message. What it does is it actually, does that. It send you get in after all the messages have been sent. OnTask sends you a nice message that says 500 emails were sent out to all students. There were no problems, and sometimes if there were problems with students' email, it will actually flag that for you as well, so that you can follow up. Now, this one has become really interesting because we weren't quite sure about whether it was something we could rely on, but it's starting to look quite valuable. So what it does is that when you check this option, OnTask is actually able to sort of plant a little button in the email. And when the students are across the email or seem to have opened it at least, it will create a new column in the table with a 1 or 0. So 0, we're quite clear now that 0 usually indicates that the student has not opened the email, and values of 1 and above indicate that the student has read the email. Okay, so that's as far as we can take it, but it's looking quite valuable. So if you check this option, it's something that you keep doing over all the emails that you send, so that you can actually see whether there are some students who have zeros for all their email readings, and then you can actually follow up, not with another email perhaps, but maybe with a Teams message or some other way of communicating with them. Yeah.
It's similar to MailChimp does something similar.
Correct, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So really, really useful because what we're seeing now, apart from sending this feedback, the other equally important part is the students' recipients of the feedback, whether they are reading it, whether they're actioning it, and that's something that we want to take note of, because that's also helpful for us to think about, well, why is my email not reaching the students? Is there something in the message? What do I need to do and all that? Yeah. Okay, so when you're done with that, you can actually click next, but don't have to do that now because there's nothing for you to send. All right, and that's it. So we actually
sends it, does it?
It will send.
Next
So
sends
clicking on the next button will send out all those emails. Yeah. So this is like the last sort of checkpoint. Yeah. Okay. And then I'm just going to cancel to go back to the table. Okay. So now we've actually created conditions, created 2 messages with conditions. Now there's another possible scenario, which is sometimes we want to send an email just to specific subgroups of students. So this could be like, maybe we just want to send emails to students who haven't done something, or we want to send an email to students who are internationals only, things like that you don't want to send to all students. So this is different from creating conditions, and I'm going to show you that step of just creating a filtered message that only goes out to a subgroup of students. So let's go back to our actions. We're going to create a new action called support for internationals. And this is going to be a filtered message. You don't have to fill this in, save some time. We just call it support for internationals. Okay. So new action, and we'll call it support for internationals. Can we leave that blank to save some time and just create the action? So now we land up in the personalized text again. And what we want to do is we're not creating conditions, because by creating conditions, the email is going to go to everyone. So what we want to do instead is to filter the students that we're sending the emails to. So this is the one that we want to click on. And OnTask prompts you to add the filter. And so we say internationals only. Okay. And I believe it is under enrollment type. Let me just go back to my manual and see what was the filter. Enrollment type equal to international. So we want to, as I said before, we need to just follow the capitalization convention so that OnTask can pick up these this condition. Create the filter. And then it tells you, very helpful, it tells you that, okay, so I've picked up 179 students who are internationals. And so my message is going to all 179 of these students. And we can just save that. And we'll go to our personalized text. I'm not going to go through this step again because I think we're quite familiar with this process. So you would just put in your message and then it will be a dear, insert the given name followed by the rest of your message. Okay, okay. Okay, so I'm now going to close this. Can I just check now whether anyone has any questions? No, all good. Yeah. Okay, very good. I hope you're feeling confident now to see that it's quite straightforward to navigate the system. Okay, and we're just using some very simple conditions and simple filters for today, just to get you started. But definitely, there's a lot more that you can do as you work with the tool. You discover more, more advanced conditions that you can create. Okay.
Can I just check, is the recommendation that you would, now that we're using OnTask, that it would be preferable to send out some kind of personalisation rather than the kind of bulk announcements that tend to go out through Canvas, or is it a combination?
That's a really good question. So academics have learned that they can use this tool quite strategically. So more like a combination. So
Right.
Canvas announcements for general announcements. Right? And personalized emails with OnTask if you want to give them individualized feedback on their progress, or sometimes there's also this other interesting way, well, not so interesting, but it's just that practical way that academics have been using OnTask is when they have substreams of students, when they have postgraduates and undergraduates in their cohort. They realize that, oh, my undergraduates or my postgraduates actually need different information from my undergraduates. So they would then filter their messages based on postgraduate or undergraduate and only give them information that they need. Because sometimes both streams are using the same Canvas site, but they need different, they have different requirements, and so they need different advice. So that's the practical way that you can use OnTask. Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, yeah. So that's some real practical considerations. Okay, for this next scenario, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk you through this process because it's quite a simple process, but this has been creating quite a bit of interest now among the academics, where they've, other than using learning management, the Canvas data, we're actually drawing in students' input in order to provide them with some personalized support, advice, or feedback. Okay, so or just to know a bit about them so that they can can offer personalized advice. So an example would be just when you create a quiz survey in Canvas. So when you create a quiz survey in Canvas, what's helpful is that the students' names are already recorded. And so you can actually pull down a report with that information and put that into OnTask directly. Okay, so what you would do is you would just pull down your quiz report from Canvas and just do the same step, put it up into merge the data into OnTask, And then what's interesting is that you can also choose the columns. So some of these columns are already existing in the table, and you don't actually need them. So things like you don't need another column with their names, all right? You don't need another column with their ID. What you do need is this SIS ID, because that's going to be the key variable. That's the information that OnTask needs to match new data with the existing data. And then the quiz attempts, you might not need, you don't need the number of times students do this quiz, so we can actually uncheck that. And what we need is this particular column, which is the response to, are you taking this subject as your major, for example, all right? And then when you click on next, you would actually just go through the same process, make sure that the key columns are matched, select all rows, and then your new column will appear towards the right. Okay, so that's how you would actually upload survey data that you can then now personalize your message to. So if students, for example, are taking this as their major, maybe you want to send them some advice. And if they're not taking the subject as their major, maybe they don't need a message. Yeah. So this is just kinds of information that you can put into OnTask to personalize support and feedback.
So can I just ask so you're saying that would have been, the survey was done as a Google survey, or was it?
No.
No.
So I'm using the Canvas quiz survey.
Right. That's where
So just to reiterate, the benefit of using Canvas is that the information about students' names is there, so it's easy to track back. We can also, so there is I have included some information about using a Google form. And you can go through this in your own time as well. The tricky thing that, with all this data security now, we just need to be careful, because Google, Google is kind of like a public platform. And in order for OnTask, I'm just going to move through the slides. So I hope, so you're going to have to select the option to collect the student emails if you don't want the extra step of trying to find their emails. What you need to do is to make your survey settings set to public. And so that can be an issue given the current climate of data privacy. That's why I'm not really going to focus on this, but it is something that you can do. And I put a big red note here. After you have uploaded this information to OnTask, it's actually recommended that you return the settings to private. Okay, just for safety. But otherwise, I would prefer to use a Canvas survey. Yeah. And that also might have implications on our learning design, because what some academics have done, as I shared in part 1 of the workshop, is they actually found that some of the activities that students were given, like a reflection survey, can actually be turned into data to give students feedback. Yeah, so if you just refer back to the first part of the workshop, Keith Haggard has a very nice example of that, where he had an end of module survey reflections, which he wasn't really using. And then he realized that it was actually beneficial, that could be turned into data to help students, to help him personalize some learning resources for students. Yeah, so these are more advanced ways that you can use OnTask. As you go along, you can explore. All right, so as I said, it's possible, but just be careful when you use this, because you actually have to make this public, and it's got all the students, it's got all the students' names and emails in there. All right. Okay, so this is just taking you through that process that you can go through in your own time. Okay, so those are the basics that I've just gone through. What I've done is set up OnTask as a new workflow for your subject. We have uploaded data. We have merged data. We have created text conditions. We have created filters for specific subgroups of students. We have talked about using survey responses to give feedback to students. And we have gone through the process of sending off the email. So that was a lot of clicking around. And now what we want to do is just take a step back from that. And we need to come back to our own subjects to think about, well, now that you know how this process looks like, the kinds of data that could be involved, the kinds of messaging that's involved, how does it look like to you, or how do you think you will be using OnTask in your subject? So again, this was something that I left you with from part 1 of the workshop. These are considerations that will help you think about how you want to use OnTask meaningfully for effective feedback in your subjects. So what are the pain points? Typically, academics have highlighted that the census date is a key point, because that's the point when students need to make a decision about whether to keep on the course or drop out without penalty. So giving students some feedback on their progress at this point is helpful, because then they can see, oh, so this is how I've been doing. Can I continue? Should I continue? Should I drop out? Yeah. So, and then what are the relevant data that you need to support students through these pain points? Is it their activity? Is it their ongoing performance? Is it some survey responses that you want to check in with students about their own, how they're feeling perhaps? The other thing is, well, are there subpopulations within your cohort? Like, for example, I mentioned different streams. So undergraduate, postgraduate, or students from different programs who might need different messages. And then lastly, but perhaps most importantly, is how does your learning design look like? Is there anything in your learning design that requires like constant feedback? So one example would be ongoing quizzes, right? So if we give feedback on their performance on those formative quizzes, especially, it's looking like students actually value knowing how they're going with these formative quizzes, and then it gives them encouragement to know that, hey, I'm getting feedback on these formative quizzes, I should continue doing them, rather than say, you know, us going, please do the quizzes, and then it's like they do the quizzes and then there's no, you know, there's no feedback, there's nothing, you know, I just did the quizzes and then what? So giving students feedback on how they're going with these formative quizzes actually helps them to know that their efforts are being acknowledged. They know how they're performing on those quizzes, so it might give them some idea about whether they need to work on this topic a bit more, or you know, or they're doing okay with that topic, and so on. So just have a think about whether there are any activity cycles where feedback or support can be embedded in a regular basis. So at part of one of the workshop, I was saying that think of OnTask as an open white box, unlike those, you know, black box algorithms that, you know, just talking about ChatGPT in a webinar today, it's really black box. You don't know what's the algorithms behind there that's giving you that information. So the value of OnTask and other systems like this is that it's an open system. You know what you're putting in. You know how you're creating those conditions. You know what's the data that you need. Yeah, so that's why it's really useful, and this is a really plus point for tools such as these. Okay, this is just a recap from part 1. Again, just to highlight this idea of feedback design. So this was the setting where there was flipped learning. So flipped learning requires students to engage in their own learning before coming to a class where they will explore the topic in more detail. So if they don't do that introductory preparatory work, they're going to be very lost when they come to class. So for this instructor, he made sure to give feedback to students after every weekly preparatory activity, so that students were getting feedback and they knew how they were going with that topic. And what was really interesting, which I forgot to highlight at part 1 of this workshop, was that the interesting thing about students, recipients of this feedback, was that they talked about how they actually stored all the feedback emails. And when it came to the exam study vacation, they were going to pull up all these emails and highlight, you know, identify which were the topics that they were not doing well in, and they were just going to focus their revision on those topics, because in that email were all the resources, all the videos, all the quizzes, all the exercises that they could redo in order to practice their mastery of that topic. So that was really something that was very interesting, and it shows that students really valued this feedback. They were keeping it and they were making use of it to help their own learning. Yeah. So this is hopefully something that we'll continue to see, how students are valuing the feedback that we give them in this way.
So can I just check for that, the data that they would have drawn on would have been from the new analytics in Canvas that shows whether they've had a page view or not, is that right?
Okay, so for this particular instance, this was in another institution, and the instructor, because he's in IT, he had actually built his own platform, and so he was able to easily pull the very fine-grained data. Yeah. So for us, we're using Canvas, and our data will look different. So just be familiar with what Canvas is giving you, and then we'll also be able to have a chat with you about the data that you currently have and how it might be made effective for feedback. Now, this is a UTS example which I shared on Tuesday. So this is the other way around. So the other, in the previous scenario, it was about the instructor giving feedback after students had done the work. In this case, Nicole gave reminders to students to do the work before it was due, so that they would come prepared for class. So her design is different. Her nudges are coming before. So she reminded students whether they had done the exercises or not. And so this is a real UTS example. She was looking at downloads of the preparatory files in Canvas. Yeah. And she used the gradebook data to give feedback on the in-semester quiz results. Yeah. Okay. And here's Key's example, as I was saying. So very short. You can see it's a really short subject, but so he had cycles, cover the topic, students reflect, he gives the support. Cover the topic, do a reflection, give support. Yeah. Okay. So these are just a reminder of the 3 kinds of feedback designs that you can consider in your own context. But please, as I said, do feel free to reach out to us so that we can have a chat and think about how your subject looks like and what might be an effective way to design feedback in your own context. Okay, so here's where we talk about what's going to happen after this second part of the workshop. We have reached the end of these 2 workshops now, but there is ongoing support. We are available for virtual consultations. This is my email address. Just feel free to reach me on Teams or just an email, and I'll be very happy to talk to you about exploring how it might be used. And yeah, and lastly, I'd like to invite you also, if you are keen, to join our little growing community of practice, where sometimes we push out messages on what people are doing in Teams, and it's also with OnTask. And also people sometimes pose questions for the community, like, I seem to have run into this issue, have anyone run into this issue before? And then people can help each other, and I can also jump in to support as well. Yeah, so I might drop you an email about this to invite you along to join this team so that you can stay in the loop with the community. Okay, and so with that, yeah, that was the end of this 2-part series, and thanks so much for coming along. And yeah, we've managed to end before 1.5 hours, which is great. But I hope importantly that you can see how OnTask can be used, and that you've been set up for the basics and are ready to make a decision at some point. Yeah. Okay, so any last questions? I'm happy to stay around.